The Detroit Lions had a very interesting 2023 NFL draft, as some thought they had the worst draft and others thought their picks were genius. Both first-round selections in Jack Campbell and Jahmyr Gibbs were definitely interesting, but I both think wound up turning out pretty well. And in my opinion, the rest of their draft was pretty good. In particular, they got an absolute steal in the second round. They got a player who is a mid-first round talent, someone that's going to be in the NFL for quite a long time, and is motivated to be one of the best to ever play at his position. Today, we're going to be talking about Brian Branch. We're going to talk about his inspiring rise at Alabama, his insane career for the Crimson Tide, and why he could save the Detroit Lions. But before we can talk about that, be sure to subscribe to the channel if you love football content, leave a like if you want to support today's video, turn on post notifications so you never miss when I upload, and let me know what player, team, topic, or situation I could cover next. Now, let's get started and talk about the insane rise of Brian Branch. Let's go back in time. Growing up, Branch searched for a way to stand out. He started playing both football and basketball with the Sandy Creek Junior Patriots, which was the local youth team, and while he was good at that, things were not easy for him. When it came to his family, his parents were divorced, and his dad had a lot of health problems which prevented him from being a part of Brian's life. Brian said, quote, "My dad has never been to one of my football games. It's messing me up on the inside." Sadly, if we flash forward to 2020, his dad would pass away, and I'm sure that was unbelievably difficult on Brian. Because of this, his high school coach became a father figure to him, and he helped develop Brian into a future star. He had pretty good accolades himself, as he played arena football back in the day, and also trained future NFL and former Auburn wide receiver Darius Slayton. From an early age, Brian was always the guy in his area. His coach said, quote, "Since Brian was in middle school, he's been the guy. He started as a freshman in high school as a safety, and he's never had to sit and actually learn." Coach was introduced to Brian as an 8th grade when he was training with one of his teammates in Joey Hunter, who went on to play for South Carolina, and that is when he was put on the map in the area. He ended up starting really early on at Sandy Creek High School and became one of the top players in the area with a lot of down the road potential. His coach said, quote, "We knew when he was a freshman he was going to be pretty good. He picked up on the concepts pretty quick, and that's usually a sign that they have the skill set to do it." Branch would eventually blow up as a junior, as he finished with 58 tackles and 5 interceptions on defense, and also played wide receiver, catching 15 passes for 368 yards and 3 touchdowns. He also returned 2 kickoffs for touchdowns, and this would send his recruiting profile into the stratosphere, and schools from all around the country would come calling. Branch picked up his first offer from Indiana, and soon schools such as Cincinnati, South Carolina, and Louisville came calling. He said, quote, "I actually grew annoyed of it after a while because my mailbox would be so stuffed I couldn't find my own mail. But this was truly a blessing, so I would not complain." As a senior at Sandy Creek High School, Branch was once again a two-way star as he caught 60 passes for 1,107 yards and 14 touchdowns and had 40 tackles and 6 picks on defense. His mom was not a fan of any particular school, but Alabama's frequent appearances on the national stage made her sort of lean their direction. She was drawn to the crimson and white uniforms, as well as Nick Saban's demeanor on the sideline. Branch would end up visiting Tennessee, Michigan, Bama, Florida State, and Oklahoma, and it was safe to say he was one of the most sought-after players in the nation, and he was going to play for a national brand that could get him in the spotlight and eventually to the NFL. He would visit Alabama for their junior day, and Coach Saban had told Brian he had an opportunity to play early in Tuscaloosa. But junior day came and went, and Brian believed he had not actually been offered a scholarship. It was not until their associate defensive coordinator called him with some concern. He said, quote, "I haven't seen you tweet anything." Brian responded with, "What was I supposed to tweet?" Kelly said, quote, "You're supposed to tweet that you got offered." Brian did get that scholarship offer from them and eventually decided to commit there. But that is not what many thought would happen. He apparently loved the proximity of Georgia Tech and Jeff Collins, and also fell in love with Oklahoma when he visited Norman. His mom thought he was going to become a Sooner, and she said she was thrown for a loop when he chose Bama, but this wasn't necessarily a bad thing. His mom approved of his choice and actually envisioned it a few years prior. She said, quote, "I just thought that the school was cool and the way that he runs that team. When I think Brian was still in middle school, I would say, oh, I wish Brian would play for Alabama. I never even divulged that to him, but I secretly had always envisioned Brian playing at Bama. It was more or less a hopeful way of thinking. At the time when he committed, he was only a 3-star recruit and ranked number 420 in the country, but he would rise. He was claimed to be a football junkie and studied film of guys such as Ray Lewis, Ed Reed, and Sean Taylor. Things were looking well for him, except right before he was going to start college. As I said earlier in the video, his father passed away in March of 2020, and his mom said that his father would have been really pumped to see him play at Bama. She said, quote, "His dad was a sports, not just football fanatic. to see his son out there would have just kind of been the icing on the cake for him, because he had so much love for the game like no one I'd ever known. He had now even more of a purpose when he got to Bama, and combining his skill set with his heart, he was going to be on a path to stardom, and that 3-star recruit was now ranked much higher. He was compared to Minkah Fitzpatrick, and according to 24/7 Sports, Branch was a 4-star recruit, the number 3 safety, and the 61st best player in the class of 2020. With high expectations and a lot of fuel to his fire, how would Branch live up to the hype? When he came into Bama, he didn't necessarily know what he'd be doing, but he was open to anything. He said, quote, "They tell me I could come in and play nickel, corner, safety, or anything defensive back-wise. In some packages, they could throw me in on receiver and on kick return and punt return duty." So how would Branch end up doing? Well, he'd get some playing time as a freshman in 2020, and he finished with 27 tackles, 7 pass deflections, and 2 interceptions. As a sophomore, his role was expected to jump up even more, and that is exactly what would end up happening to him. He would have an insane 2021 season, finishing with 55 tackles, 9 pass deflections, and 1 sack. His numbers were good, but that was not the best part of his game. Despite Bama falling in the national championship, the Tide still had a tremendous year. Both Will Anderson and Bryce Young had historic seasons, but according to Pro Football Focus, Branch was actually the best player on the Tide's roster. He led all college defenders with a 92.0 tackling grade. He had 56 stops without letting a single player break a tackle, and just dominated his position. Yeah, he was the most elite player on Bama's roster, and we're talking about 2 all-time greats. Unfortunately, he would not be eligible for the 2022 NFL Draft, so he'd have to come back and hope to have one more big season before he could play on Sundays. In 2022, Bama got off to a hot start, but as we know, they lost games to both LSU and Tennessee, so they would end up missing their opportunity to go to the SEC Championship and get revenge in the college football playoff. Branch, though, had his best year yet. He finished with 90 total tackles, 32 assisted tackles, 7 pass deflections, 3 sacks, and 2 interceptions. Branch was truly elite on the defense, but he was always overshadowed. Everyone talked about Gibbs in the backfield, Bryce Young at quarterback, or Will Anderson as an edge rusher. No one was talking about Branch. Luckily, he got plenty of hype though. He was named a first-team All-American after last season and decided to declare for the 2023 NFL Draft. Branch played in a total of 40 games through his 3 years at Bama, recording 172 tackles, 19.5 TFLs, 4 sacks, and 27 pass breakups. According to NFL Mock Database, Branch was a projected first-round pick, the 24th overall prospect, and had a 73.3% chance of going in the first round. Branch was expected to hear his name called on the opening night, but unfortunately, he would have to wait until the second night. Many expected him to go early in the second round, but eventually he fell all the way to 45th overall, where he was scooped up by the Detroit Lions. This guy was a huge get for them, as he was one of the best players in pass coverage, had great stats, was well coached, and was going to be very versatile at the next level. For the Lions, he'll be able to play both corner and safety, and one scout thought he was far and beyond the best at his position in the draft. He said, quote, "Alabama's Brian Branch is really solid and probably a mid to late first rounder. He's more of a slot corner in college with the versatility to play back at safety, and after Branch, one team said it wouldn't be a shock to not see the next safety go until the 4th round. Not only does Branch have great physical measurables, but as I said, he had a great career at Bama, advanced metrics love him, and based on his story, he's the kind of guy that's going to have a great culture fit with Detroit, and I think will be there for quite a while. But what do you guys think? If you're a Lions fan, what do you think of Brian Branch? What do you think of this year's draft? And what prospects should I cover in my next video? Be sure to let me know down below, leave a like if you want to support today's video, subscribe if you're new, and check out all my other videos on the end screen. I hope to see you guys again soon, but until next time, peace.